Alright, we are heading directly into the center city area of Philadelphia, and I tell you what, it is not my favorite riding, that is for sure. Alright everybody, what is up? What is up? As always, thanks for stopping by to another video today. As you can see, we are out on the 2022 Harley Davidson Softail Street Bob, taking a little cruise through the lovely streets of Philadelphia. We got a pretty nice summer-ish morning going on here in early June. Good temperatures, we got blue skies, all is good, and we are taking the Street Bob on a little ride down directly into the heart of Center City, which is something that I don't do very often, and specifically something I don't do very often with my 2022 Softail Street Bob. And that's kind of what the gist of today's video is going to be, is talking a little bit about my experience riding this bike around the city of Philadelphia, specifically the very heart of the city. And the reason I want to do that is because I get a lot of questions out there about, you know, obviously I've got a 2019 Sportster, I've got this Street Bob, and people ask me a lot of questions sometimes of saying, you know, like, you know, I live in this area, I'm looking at kind of like this style bike, what do you think about the Sportster for this type of riding, or the Street Bob for this type of riding? Because obviously when you're looking at a new bike or just getting a bike in general, you really want to take into consideration the style of riding you're going to be doing, because you want to get the right bike for the style of riding that you're most frequently going to be doing. And that's why I want to give you guys a little bit of insight out there as to some of my experience with this bike in the city. And I'll tell you right off the bat, I'm going to tell you this is probably not the best bike for you if this is the majority of the type of riding you're gonna do. Like right down here in center city areas like this, major cities, probably not the best bike for that. I'm gonna tell you why, give you a couple examples of why I think that way. And so first off, let me know what you guys think about that. Obviously you can ride any bike anywhere you want. We have a bagger in the city, a little 300 out on the highway. You can try to do whatever you want, but let me know what you guys think out there of what kind of the best bikes are for certain areas and what you would want if you were in the city like this. Because in my opinion, it, like, generally speaking, it seems pretty obvious, but like if you're spending most of your time riding around in a center city district like this, or a very urban area, you're probably not going to want some big giant huge bagger with a fairing and bags and stuff like that if this is where you're spending most of your time. And I mean, that seems kind of like an obvious statement. And then conversely, if you think about like traveling and highway riding and stuff like that, you're probably not going to want like a little 300 Honda Rebel. But then again, like I said, that's not to say that you can't or wouldn't. It just might not be the best option. And so what I would say too is my experience with the Harley Street Bob so far is, I would say this is also not a great option for heavy city riding. And now I kind of say that too because in my opinion the city is not great riding anyway, no matter what bike you're on in general. It's stop, go, traffic, people, all this nonsense going on. I mean, most people, I would say, just want to be out on the open road, cruising without all the stopping, traveling, all that stuff. But then you do have, you know, some of those people that use it for a little more functional stuff, like a motorcycle in the city, to just get around because it is more efficient. But in my opinion, city riding sucks, but that's what we're doing today for this conversation anyways. So back to it, like I said, I am declaring, in my opinion, the Softail Street Bob not a great city bike. A city is a terrible place to ride this thing. And so there's several different reasons that I'm going to run through that, why I feel that way. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree. So the first reason I would say that is kind of because the Milwaukee 8, at least from my experience, has a little bit of a short first gear. So first gear, you know, it's got all the power and torque you need, obviously, to be effective and efficient, but it's got what I would call like a short gear, obviously, short first gear. You know, if there's any of you more in-depth engine or mechanic guys out there that kind of know a little bit more specifically what I'm talking about, feel free to chime in down in the comments. But first gear just kind of dies off real quick. And so when you're going slow, you know, you're stopping, you're going, stuff like that, you don't want to have to be like shifting all the time. So when you're going at like these slow speeds, if I start to pick up the pace a little bit and I want to keep going, see, I just kind of had to like shift into second, where ideally, and you're in some of these tight quarters and some of these tight spaces, I'd rather just be able to keep it in first gear, if that makes sense. So I mean, that's one thing. I'd rather have a little bit of a longer first gear to just be able to pull out that first gear, not have to switch gears and things like that all the time. Just get in that first gear, just go putz around town in the same gear. So next up, I would also say not a great city bike because of the power. And so kind of what do I mean by that? You know, obviously the Milwaukee 8 114, very powerful bike. Not like a super horsepower bike, but really good torquey bike. And to me, I'd rather be out somewhere where I can like just open it up, unleash it, really use all that good power. And like, it's just boring, you know, you just can't do that in the city. Now, I will say that the torque and power is great when you're trying to zip in and out of traffic. Very effective and efficient for that. But I don't know, that comes back to just riding in the city in general. I would kind of say, you know, you just can't go super fast and cruise because you're just stopping every block. So the power is definitely fun and effective in the city if you need it to be, but like I said, that city riding is just not how I want to use the bike, and that makes it kind of disappointing as well. Now, with that being said, I will say that, you know, there's all that power stuff. It is fully effective and functional and useful around town when you're ducking and dodging inside of traffic and stuff. That's really helpful. The next reason I would say you don't want this bike in the city is because the Milwaukee 8 just gets so hot. Like, this thing, I don't know, this engine just runs like so hot when you're sitting in this stop and go traffic. Look at that, from light to light right there. This thing really starts to get hot, and you can start feeling that heat and air just kind of like coming straight back up at you, and that heat gets a little uncomfortable at times. Obviously, I'm curious to know if anybody else has that with their Milwaukee 8 running super hot, whether it's Softail touring, because in my opinion, I think it runs hotter than the Sportster. I don't know if it's just because it's such a bigger engine, but this thing runs super hot. Something to take into consideration when you're driving this thing around town. You're going to be sitting in traffic, you're going to be stopping and going. This thing's definitely going to start to heat up on you. And so the next thing is, this is kind of Harleys in general, is everything is just so big and chunky. Now obviously I switched out my grips recently because I thought they were just like too big and chunky, but the levers as well, the levers are big and chunky. Everything kind of has like a big range of motion. The pegs are big and chunky. The range of motion on your shifter lever down there. And the reason I say that is because in my opinion, you want like just smaller, quick controls in the city when you got to make like quick little moves and stuff like that, quick braking, stopping, acceleration, shifting. In my opinion, it would be better in the city anyways to have just like smaller features, smaller controls that you can just kind of blast through those things really quick, shift, brake, stop, all that thing. Just something to take into consideration there. I feel like a lot of the controls and stuff are a little chunky and big for city riding. You'd want something a little bit smaller. Then also for city riding, you want to take into consideration, and this is a big one here, would be kind of the weight of this bike. So this is basically about a 650-pound motorcycle. Again, in the city, like, I just feel like you want something a little bit smaller. If that is the majority of your riding, something smaller, lighter, I feel like is going to be more effective for you. Again, all just kind of my opinion and experiences and recommendation. Again, you can get away with riding anything. You can ride a big old bagger down here if that's what you want to do. You live in the city and ride all over the city and you want to do it on your bagger, that's fine. But 650 pounds, that's kind of a big bike for the city. If you think about it too, as far as the engine, like 1850cc, something like that. An 1850cc bike, 640 pounds. This is a lot bigger of a bike than what you typically see, or what I typically see anyways, around the city of Philadelphia. Now, in consideration with the weight, I will say there is some good aspects to this while riding it in the city. Even though it's bigger and powerful, you think about all the different nonsense that comes with riding in the city, like potholes, traffic, you know, splitting lanes, stuff you got to do to stay safe, get where you're going. The bike is pretty agile and nimble from that aspect. So, you know, you can dodge the potholes, you can cut traffic, even though it is a little bit bigger and heavier. I will say it does kind of excel from that aspect. So this consideration kind of combines the power and the weight. You know, you think about a big bike, big heavier bike with power like this, you get going, you get moving, you got a lot of momentum going. Not necessarily the best brakes on this thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, they are effective and efficient. They're going to stop you in any way you need to. But when you're riding in the city like this, you see we're downtown, we're on Broad Street heading up towards City Hall. You're doing so much starting and stopping that it can just start to be a pain sometime with a heavier bike like this. You get all that momentum, all that inertia moving. You're going light to light. Like, look how many lights we've got going on up here on Broad Street right now. So that's just one thing to consider. You got more weight, you got more power, you're gonna be doing a lot of stopping. Just really think about how your momentum is gonna carry you into these intersections like this, and just be aware of how you need to brake to get this thing stopped from stop sign to stop sign or light to light. So that's a little bit of my experience so far, and just things to really kind of take into consideration, you know, when you're getting a Street Bob and you live in a city or urban environment. Like I always say, I mean, in general, I'd rather ride any bike out in the country, out on the highway, out on the open road, no starting and stopping. But I mean, really, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this bike for just like a lot of city riding. Like if you're doing 70% city riding, I don't think I would necessarily recommend this. Really, if you think about it, I'd recommend something just, you know, a little bit smaller. Like even my Sportster is a little clunky and, you know, annoying around town sometimes. Just the way the power delivers, just the kind of the way the weight's distributed and things like that. But I mean, I usually use my Sportster now around town as my around town bike, and the Street Bob when we're getting outside of town. So the Sportster's definitely one I would recommend a little bit more for city riding. Triumphs are also great in the urban city environment. Like you think about the Street Twin, Speed Twin. I've ridden those bikes around the city and they're just like perfect city bikes. But I mean, obviously they can do all that other stuff too. You can travel on them. You know, if you think about like a Honda Rebel 500, those are pretty popular around here. I see a lot of those as well. Other bikes I see a lot in the city, like I see a lot of Moto Guzzi's around. I see a lot of Ducati Scramblers. Those bikes also just great power to weight, size ratios. They're really good around the city. But then again, like I always say, a lot of it just comes down to personal preference, really. What you want to do, what you like, how you like to ride. Like I said, I don't think I'd be wanting to take a big bagger down here all the time for a lot of those reasons that I mentioned on the Street Bob here. But, you know, you want to live most of your riding down here on a bagger, that works too. I mean, honestly, if you're looking for the most effective and efficient ride in the city, you're talking about like a scooter probably. Alrighty, so I think that is going to wrap this one up for now as we finish up this little ride through the center city area of Philly. Again, not even my favorite place to ride any bike really. And once again, like I said, let me know down in the comments what you guys think of certain bikes in certain areas. Is there certain bikes you definitely like to ride in certain areas, bikes you stay away from in certain areas, especially if you have like multiple bikes like myself? Do you use your bikes for different riding, different places you're going, different situations you're going to encounter? Drop it down in the comments and let me know what you guys think about city riding as well, and what bikes would be great for city riding or to stay away from for city riding. So that'll wrap it up for now. If you like anything we got going on here, make sure you go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, make sure you guys ride safe out there. We will catch you on the next one. As always, it's the Moto John. We'll see y'all on down the road. Peace.